So this is my session directly taken from Scottish Summit, as you can tell by the not so inconspicuous branding. So it's, for anyone that's seen it at Scottish Summit, it's the same content. But as with all of these sessions, hopefully some new questions bring out some new information. And if there's anything that you didn't ask last time and you want to, give me a shout, let me know, we'll work through it. A little bit about me, first of all. So I potentially own the greatest catfish picture on LinkedIn. It's the one I use all the time because I think I look great on it, but that's me. Anyway, I'm Craig. I currently work as senior pre-sales consultant at Incremental Group. For anyone that doesn't know Incremental, we're in Inner Circle partner. I think I'm formally obliged from marketing to say Incremental Group are part of Telefonica Tech. And I've spent most of my time at Incremental working in our financial services division, but more recently, I've branched out into the professional services team, and I'm also responsible for building out our Spanish market, which is incredibly exciting for me. And yeah, for anyone that follows me on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot more about that in the future. Like most of us, fair few Microsoft certifications, certified Scrum Master. You would never want to employ me as a Scrum Master, but it's there. So if you've got any questions, give me a shout. And my background is in functional consultant roles as well as sales and people management. On a personal level, I'm obsessed with sport. My brother once told me I had more teams than a sticker book, which I think is an achievement. I think it was meant as a dig, but I'll take it as an achievement. I also, in my spare time, I host an English-speaking Football Club Barcelona podcast called Barca Talk. Again, don't all sign up at once for that, I'm sure. So the purpose of this session is to talk about pre-sales, and it's 10 steps to make demos better, how to approach a demo. And I think genuinely one of the big problems that the pre-sales industry has, or the pre-sales role has within the BizApps industry, is that it's a very misunderstood art. I think pre-sales people are hard to find. Pre-sales is hard to define. You know it's good when you see it, you know it's bad when you see it, but there's a lot of middle ground there that no one really understands. And it leads to what I think is probably the most unfair aspect of being a functional consultant or a salesperson in this industry, is that you get thrown into pre-sales tasks in a manner that would never happen somewhere else. You would never ask your FC to go and, I don't know, become marketing for the day. You wouldn't ask your marketeer to go and throw an ERD together and plan what an architectural design needs to look like. Yet pre-sales is something that gets thrust upon people as if we should all just be able to do it, and it's not very fair. It does a disservice to really good people in other roles in the industry, and it also does a bit of a disservice to pre-sales. So my plan in this session, and also the reason I started the practical pre-sales blog, which you can go and have a look at, it's grossly neglected from a content perspective, but there is some good stuff on there, is to try and give people information that can make them that little bit better at pre-sales. If it's something that you find you've got a niche for and you want to do it as a career, do it. It's amazing. But for those of you who get asked to do pre-sales activity on an ad hoc basis, hopefully there's bits and pieces that can make you a little bit more comfortable and a little bit better at it. And the starting point for me is really important, and it leads to that point, which is that pre-sales are siblings of sales, not servants. I imagine that most of us at some point have been asked to do some kind of pre-sales activity or a demo, and we all know it shouldn't happen. And yet we feel mandated because sales have asked us to do it, that we do it. So the starting point is that sales and pre-sales, and when I say pre-sales, I mean if you're acting in that pre-sales capacity. So if you're an FC and you've been asked by your sales compatriots to do that, is that partnership should be equal. And it's incredibly important that we recognize what good and bad look like, so that we don't walk ourselves into pre-sales scenarios that don't need to happen. Some salespeople don't like hearing that, but ultimately that's where we need to be. We're siblings, we're not servants. And it leads me to my first point. So step one of delivering great demos and great pre-sales activity is simply asking yourself this: what is the point? And it doesn't happen enough. It does not happen enough. The amount of times that demos are just blindly undertaken, blindly agreed to, and they don't serve any major purpose, it's quite scary, really. And I think that's the fundamental starting point for any level of pre-sales activity or demo activity, especially for people on the call who are solely responsible for revenue generation. If you, for example, like Charlie, you just started an incredibly exciting venture where you're building something. Time is your most precious commodity, and when it's your own organization, your own business, you are aware how important your time is. Yet if you work for a partner and you're paid for your 40 hours a week, your 37 and a half hours a week, it's easy to just assume, well, I'm getting paid, I'll do it. We need to take the same approach to those who are entrepreneurs would, which is, I need to spend my time doing things that will ultimately move everyone forward. And so we need to understand before we agree to a demo, what do we know? What do we know about the business? What do we know about their requirements? What do we know about our relationship with them? What do we know about what they're trying to achieve? The second point is, who do we know? Before any meeting that we're hoping to generate revenue. And this goes beyond BizApps, actually. This goes into anything that is a service industry, in my opinion, which is, who do we know? So if we think the demo ask is to go and sell a platform solution that we think will take 3 years to deliver, and we've got someone that doesn't hold any seniority in the business, it is pointless. Who will be in the room? What do we know about them? What are their job titles? Have we looked at them on LinkedIn? Do we have any relationship at all with them? And the final point is arguably the most important, and you can probably roll the other two into this, which is, how does this demo add value to the sales process? And this is multifaceted. So this isn't just the sales process for us. This is not just a question of how does this take us closer to closing a deal. This is also to the client. You only get one chance to do a good first demo. It's kind of that cliche about, what is it? You get one chance to make a good first impression. It's no different. So if we walk into that first demo and we're badly prepared because we're simply under-knowledged, if that even makes sense, then we can't repeat that. We don't get that chance again. So the first thing before we do anything technical with a demo, ask yourself that. What's the point? It's actually decent advice for everything that we do in BizApps, to be brutally honest. And the second point, once we've established that we have a purpose, we have a point, we know the company, we know what they're trying to achieve, we know the people in the room, it all stacks up, we've been through an orb, or we've been through some kind of commercial filtration process that says, we should be putting pre-sales time on this activity, then we need to start building the commercial value blocks. And commercial is very, very, very deliberately underlined there, because it is vitally important that everything that we do runs from a commercial perspective, not a technical one. And I'm going to come onto that in a little while and probably become a bit dogmatic about it and probably seem like I'm being a little bit overzealous about it. But fundamentally, we need to build commercial value blocks. What are the company trying to achieve? Anyone who starts with technology fails in pre-sales. So, for example, is the organization trying to bring their sales and marketing teams closer together? That might end up being a sales and marketing play. Look how amazingly we can share this information because it's sat on Dataverse. Look how amazing it is that we can see insights in both applications. But fundamentally, they're trying to fix something with their sales and marketing activity in their teams. It might be that they're losing too many opportunities and they feel like their customer service is suffering. It might be that they're slow to react to their customer base. Therefore, they want to explore marketing automation. There's lots of different things that could be, but fundamentally, we need to start with commercial value blocks. What are the big ticket items commercially they're trying to achieve? Take them as blocks, take them in their own right as parts of the puzzle that we need to put together. One of the things that anyone who's been around the BizApps world long enough will see is that there's a crazy obsession with Lego in this industry. But it totally makes sense, because everything that we do from a platform perspective, from a commerciality perspective, from building teams, from putting together statements of work, it's all blocks that go together. And we might start with the same pieces, but we can put them together in a million different ways for a million different customers. It's no different. What are the fundamental blocks that need put together to build this model that the customer will be happy with? So start with them. Once we know there's a purpose, put together the value blocks that we'll use in order to build our demo and make sure that we're hitting the criteria that we have in front of us. And again, I kind of almost don't apologize for how obsessive I'm going to be about this sentence, really. But I think, there's so much that we can learn from it, which is that we end at technology, we don't start from it, because fundamentally that's not where the customer is. The customer is starting from one of two things. They've either got some pain they need to mitigate, or they've got some opportunity that they can see in their future. Now, often they're actually two sides of the same coin. Often the pain they need to mitigate is the opportunity that they can maximize. But fundamentally, every organization that we transact with are trying to do one of two things. They're trying to either spend less money or make more. Fundamentally, if you take any project you've worked on, you can take all of it back to one of those two things. I am yet to speak to an organization who said to me, Craig, what I really want is to make sure that we've got the best IaaS system going. No one cares. No one cares. Fundamentally, it's the hard truth we all need to hear. 99% of the people that we speak to don't care what we do with technology. They care about fixing the problems their business has or maximizing the opportunity they have. So if we start with technology, we're already different to the customer, and that synergy is just harder and harder to achieve. So yeah, top tip of mine. And I genuinely believe if you take nothing else from this session, I said it at Scottish Summit, I've probably said it to every person that's ever asked me, if you take nothing else away from that, that's the key to successful pre-sales. End at tech. Don't start with it. So we've got the purpose. We know it makes sense. We've got the commercial value blocks. We're starting with them. We're not starting at technology. What we then need to do is bring people into the mix. I think it's very, very, very hard to make pre-sales about people if you don't map them at some point in your preparation. Almost every organization will tell you they're a people business. Now, that could mean a million different things. Does it mean that they just don't hire and fire quickly? Does it mean that, they do well-being Wednesdays where people can get off an hour early? Who knows? There'll be a whole host of flavors of it, but most businesses will tell you they're a people business. And fundamentally, it's from a good place, and it's true. In pre-sales, we need to be people. Does that make sense? We'll go with it. Because ultimately, it's users that are going to use this system. It's users that will benefit somewhere. It's users that we'll interact with, especially if we're in any way B2C or in most B2B organizations that are service industries, which the vast majority of CRM is by definition. We need to understand who's using it on both ends of the commercial scale. Who are the customers? What are they doing? Who are the users? What are they doing? And who are the people that sit in the middle or above that? So genuinely start to map these personas. For people that are doing regular pre-sales, for people that are maybe building accelerators or they're building go-to-market solutions that are, I don't want to use the word cookie cutter, but they are repeatable demos, you're going to start having personas that you use time and time again. We have Annie Wallace in Incremental, and Annie Wallace's inbox is a disaster because we use it all the time, but Annie's a person. Annie's got history, Annie's got marketing insights, Annie's got an email trail that we use, and because it's so much easier to use Annie than it is customer. If you bring that into the staff at the organization, it is so much easier to try and find names or job titles and use those personas. If you're doing a marketing demo and you've got someone from marketing in the room and you can talk to them like they'll be using the system, I guarantee you that sell is easier. People buy from people and people sell to people. That's ultimately where we need to be. We're not selling tech to nameless users. It's not that, okay? So we build up the people. I've got a sales rep. What are their problems? What are their opportunities? What do they like? What do they dislike? How can we fix the problem for that person? And if you work backwards from your commercial value blocks, you'll find the people easily. If there's no commercial value block and there's no people and personas that we can map, walk away from it. Walk away from it. Just because you've agreed on day one doesn't mean you have to follow it through. If you can't put people to any of these processes, go backwards, because that means that people aren't going to sign off on it. Okay, so we map the people that are involved. We map what they like, what they don't like, what they're trying to achieve, what they like about their current system, what they'd love in a new system, all of the different things that you'd look at, but we physically write them down. We map them. And then we start to go on a journey. So once we've got the commercial value blocks and the people, we start planning our demo. And it's only at this stage that we start thinking about what the demo itself will look like. And what we're doing now is that we've effectively built our own Lego blocks and we're going to put them together. We know the colors of the blocks and we know what shape and size of blocks we're going to be using. And we start to take our demo journey into reality. I am yet to see a pre-sales demo go well that hasn't been planned to some level of detail. It's very easy to fall into the trap, especially for experienced people who have, I've been working with Dynamics since version 3. It's very easy for that person to think they can go on and blag a demo, and you probably can blag a very superficial, very feature heavy whiz around Dynamics. You can probably do that really well. But if we go back to the commercial value blocks, that's not what your customers buy in. Your customers buy in solutions to their problems. And the minute you get a question thrown in, the whole thing is going to turn into a bit of a nightmare. So plan your journey very deliberately. Plan your paths. Plan your happy path. Plan your sad path if something goes wrong. Plan at what point you're going to put the different value blocks together. Look at timings. Look at key phrases that you're going to use to make your things link together. Throw your segues in. Throw your sentences that you're thinking will sound great if you just need to say them. Plan it as much as you want. Do it on Visio, do it on OneNote, do it on pen and paper if it works for you. But have a plan, and it makes sure that all of your people and your personas and all of your value blocks are mapped in that plan. And even if you don't follow it to the letter, just having it will make you feel better, especially for people dipping in and out of pre-sales. There's one of my wife's favorite films is True Romance. I don't know if anyone's seen it. I thought it was rubbish, to be fair, but she loves it. And there's a phrase in that movie which says it's better to have a gun and not need it than to need a gun and not have it. And I think that's where you are with your demo plan. Even if you go off piste and you go a little bit rogue on it, it's still something that you can bring yourself back to if you get lost. All right. Planning is massively important in pre-sales. And again, it's kind of a similar flavor to what we saw before, but people don't buy your features. They buy solutions to their problems. I don't know how many times I've seen pre-sales demos turn into just this big competition of how many features I can name. Did you know that we've got Copilot? And someone says, I don't really care about AI. Fundamentally, my marketing team's falling over. We'll get to that when we get to it. And people are baffled as to why they don't want to see the cool thing. It's incredibly common in ISVs. So an ISV builds something they think's amazing for their industry, and as soon as someone says they're not interested, the whole thing falls over because it's all they were selling. They weren't selling a solution to problems. They were selling the thing that they'd built. You know, for techies in the room, it's really hard when someone doesn't think something's interesting as you do. But fundamentally, people aren't buying our technology. They're buying the solutions to their problems. They're buying the thing that fixes their pain. They're buying the thing that maximizes their opportunity. And ultimately, I think if we spoke to most of our customers that we've worked with all the years, if a pen and paper would have fixed their problem, they probably would have used pen and paper. If Excel would have fixed their problem without any of the risks, they probably would have used Excel. People aren't going into a multi-million pound 5-year engagement on a platform stack if they could help it. Let's be brutally honest. There's no FD in the world that wants to spend that money if they can avoid it. So we need to make sure that we're solving problems, not that we're just hawking tech around and hoping people buy it. Some demo don'ts then. So we've got our people, we've got our blocks, we've got our plan. The next thing I want to cover is the things to avoid. And these are the things that will genuinely make your demo stand out for the wrong reasons. And again, you generally see this with people who are getting thrown into pre-sales, who aren't naturally is the wrong word, who aren't used to doing it, who aren't doing it regularly, and you know they've been asked to do a different type of playback. So when you see people who are comfortable doing sprint retro playbacks and they're asked to do something that is entirely hypothetical because it's at the start of the sales process, they are different things. And so the demo don'ts that I would say is, firstly, never play the let me show you everything game. It is so tempting, especially if you're in a Dynamics versus Salesforce compete, or especially if you're an ISV, or if you think that you're against a direct competitor of a partner. It's so easy to think that it's quantity, not quality, that will win out. And it never is. It is never the case. And it just becomes obvious what you're doing, you know, especially when it comes to things like features that everyone expects. No one has bought Dynamics 365 sales because you can create accounts and contacts. No one's done that. I promise you, no one's done that. In this day and age, I think we can all assume that you can create records. Okay, so unless the creation of that record is one of your commercial value blocks, don't show it. People don't need to see it. People can assume. Use it in your talk track or whatever. So don't show the obvious. And on that point, don't let your demo turn into training. Remember that fundamentally this is a sales engagement. It can't be training. So if someone says, I don't understand how I would do that in practice, you've got a decision to make. Do you show them or do you not? Only show someone something in terms of how to do it if you believe it's fundamental to the sales process. If you can sell this product without showing the person that thing at that time, don't show them it. It's training and it's boring. Training is a skill, it's an art, and it's also something that you should be selling at some point. We can't be giving people systems they can't use, but in the pre-sales process, it doesn't need to be training at that point. Don't let your demo turn into training. And don't try and be over technical. And again, you would assume that the people who fall into this trap most are the architects among us. It's the solution architects, it's the CTOs, it's the people that have been around here forever. And it's very rarely the case. It's very rarely the case. The people that fall into the overly technical problem are people at the start of their careers. Normally, it's people who are carrying massive amounts of imposter syndrome. And we've all been there. We've all been there. It's a cruel, cruel thing. And it goes away eventually, and then you start walking into rooms of more seniority and it comes back again, and you're just fighting a different level of imposter syndrome. But it's people that are trying to overcompensate for their own level of perceived knowledge. The minute you become the expert in the room and you're selling it, you panic and you think you've got to try and impress, and it's not the case. And the thing that should root you back to not being overly technical is, if you remember, people aren't buying the technology, they're buying the solution. And as long as you're willing to listen and question, you can get this. You can get the problems that they're trying to fix. It doesn't need to be technology. Understand the business, understand the drivers, understand the motivations and the people, and the technology will take care of itself. Don't try and be over technical. You'll get found out. You'll walk yourself into a corner. At best, you make a really good friend in a CTO. At worst, you lose 95% of the people that are in that room because they don't care. They don't care. Any non-techies in the room aren't bothered about the code or the source control or the ALM or AI integration. They're not bothered, but you've just lost an audience, okay? And the big thing to remember about the quantity here is if a customer has got 3 things they want to see and you show them those 3, you've got 100% of your demo nailed. If you throw another 3 in because you think it's interesting, you've got 50% of your demo nailed, and you showed them half the things you showed them they don't care about. Okay, it's all about quality. It's about understanding. It's not about quantity. It's not a volume game. So yeah, avoid them at all costs. In terms of how we show those commercial value blocks, how we make sure that we're landing that message, because it is slightly different. It is slightly different. It's very different from a playback that you would have during sprints or at the end of a more waterfall build. It's different than if you were doing kind of internal training. It's a different approach to explaining functionality, because as much as I'm saying it's solutions, it's not technology, end at technology, don't start with it. Fundamentally, we still need to explain these systems to people, these platforms, these applications. We still need to explain technical technical items to people who might be non-technical. There's an art to that, but the art is actually really, really, really simple to map. And this isn't particularly groundbreaking. It's certainly not my words. It's from a book that I'll mention later on. But it's a well-worn methodology of how you explain this. But until you hear it, you're probably not going to get there. Okay, and the formula is very simple, and it's this. You firstly tell people what you're going to show them. And again, it's value, it's not feature. You've told me that one of your problems in the organization right now is that because you don't have a joined up marketing approach, you know that your level of detail in your collateral is far too one-dimensional. You know there's no personalization. And because of that, from what you're showing me in terms of the financial ramifications, you're actually losing customers. Let me show you how we can fix that. The next thing is you demonstrate that. So, fundamentally, that's going to be personalization in marketing emails. It's going to be, using Dataverse to make sure that we can bring in behavioral demographic, whatever. But we're going to show them how we do that. That's the demo part. And then once we've shown them, you reconfirm that. So what I'm hoping that you can see is by utilizing what I've just shown you there, we've been able to bring in rich information about that customer. In one journey, we're going to be able to hit all 200 people in that segment with the information that pertains to them. Now, that could be code blocks, and there's different geographical ramifications, but we're explaining the value that we've given back, and then we confirm it. And this is where you need to be brave, okay? Because if you follow that process and your audience says, no, I don't get it, that's grim. For anyone that's been there, that you have that moment where you go, oh shit, this isn't good. You need to be brave. You need to back yourself. You need to back your preparation. And that's where you say, brilliant, let me show you again. And the reason we do that is because if we don't confirm that the audience has understood, then we're never going to win. I'll rephrase that. We might win, but we'll win despite us, not because of us. Be willing and be brave enough to be told that you haven't landed your message well. Be able to pivot. And this is why if we understand the business, we can go back and we can reword that. One of my challenges right now is I'm working in 2 languages. And my problem is that if I don't land it first and second time, that third time is harsh. But in my native language, I can go on forever if I have to, and eventually I'll get it. Or I fundamentally missed the idea of what the business needs. So again, be willing to acknowledge it and say, I think I might have misunderstood your requirement. Can you explain? Can you explain what I've missed? Give me the information. The business fundamentally has solutions that we need to, they have problems that we need to provide solutions for. They'll give you that information if you ask for it. But if you don't confirm, you'll never know. And then you'll be baffled as to why you lose. Okay, and once we've confirmed, and once the room is happy, or we've gone on too long and we fundamentally need to move on, at that point we close that particular value block and move on to the next one. Okay, so tell, show, tell, check, close. Follow that with every point. You don't have to make it really contrived and obvious, but fundamentally, I've understood that you have a requirement for X. I'm then going to show you how my solution solves your problem. Did that make sense? Yes. Right, then I'll move on. Okay, so it's borderline foolproof, to be fair, but it does need an understanding of what the business are trying to achieve, obviously. The next one is, I mentioned that the overly technical part is often the people at the start of their career. This part is often the people at the more senior end. It's often the architects, it's the CTOs, it's people that are kind of getting dragged into pre-sales who maybe think they're a little bit beyond that, or they haven't done that kind of start of the pre-sale at the start of the sales process for a while. So this is probably the other end of the scale. And it's, you need to chat, don't preach. It's very easy to take being the expert in the room as the permission to just talk forever about how good the technology is and how good your business is. And it's a really tricky thing to avoid. And especially for someone who is outgoing, someone that is willing to try and talk forever. It's a hard thing to rein in, okay, but it's something that we need to be really mindful of. The first thing is not over talking. Yes, it's your demo, but fundamentally it's their time and money. There is a good chance that you're paid to be delivering this session. There's a very good chance that for a lot of people from the customer side, they're not paid to be in these sessions. We've taken away from their other BAU. Okay, so don't just incessantly talk at them hoping they understand you. You need to make sure that it's interactive. You need to make sure that you're getting the balance right in terms of, yes, you're an expert providing guidance, but it can't just be a monologue. Okay, one of the easiest ways of solving that problem is to make it very clear that you're inviting questions at any point. Most of us will end a PowerPoint with a Q&A slide. I would argue that if you get to the end, that's the first time you're asked a question, you've probably overspoke, to be honest. So make it very clear that you're willing to accept questions, assuming you are, of course. If you're absolutely terrified of that fact, then, you know, maybe see if someone else can do the demo if you think you're going to need to do that. But, you know, invite questions, have people being interactive, especially in this day and age of people being off camera, on mute. You don't know if they're listening. It becomes a bit of a lonely session when you're the only voice talking. So yeah, don't just talk incessantly. The customer doesn't want it. And after about 10 minutes, you'll realize you don't want it either. Don't lose control. So on the flip side of that, it's also really important that your demo doesn't become just anarchy. Basically, yes, we don't want to be overbearing and over talking, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we remain control. This is really important when it comes back to that planning element, that journey element. If we know we've got 3 things to hit commercially in terms of those value blocks, and 2/3 of the way through the demo, we're only on value block 1, you're losing control. You need to bring it back. Okay, so it's about striking that balance between not over talking, not losing control, sticking to your plan, making sure you're ticking the boxes, and being interactive within limits. In the early days, I don't do it as much as I should now, if I'm being honest. In the early days of my pre-sales career, I would have timings next to my journey. I wouldn't be to the second, but I would have a loose timing. If after half an hour I've not hit point X, I need to get there quickly. If I don't have 10 minutes left for my wrap up, I need to make sure that I'm moving on a little bit quicker on something else. So yeah, follow-ups to good demos are better than bad demos that have missed the mark. Be willing to have a second session. Be willing to take points away and come back. If your salesperson, because they should be guiding the organization of these sessions, if your salesperson has got a good enough relationship with the customer and they've provided enough value in terms of demonstrating the benefits of the customer in dealing with us, a second session should be fine. It is better to have a good second session than to ruin your first one. So yeah, make sure that you're chatting, you're not preaching, but also you're not losing control. And it's just important that we recognize that we have to give people a reason to come off camera. On camera and off mute. We need to give them that reason. You know, it's kind of, to use a football reference, you know, when Jose Mourinho was at Madrid, he said it's I don't understand. People come here and it's like they're at the theatre. They're waiting to be entertained, whereas in England, people will cheer for anything. We need to recognize that we're in Spanish football in them terms. Sorry for anyone who doesn't care about football, but you know, we need to give our customers a reason to get excited and to get involved. We can't just assume that they're going to be amazing for us. We're going to walk into difficult audiences. We're going to walk into cynical audiences, especially when you consider the amount of projects that go wrong in the tech world, the amount of people that will have technology done to them. And so like, here we go again, another system I have to learn. We need to get those people excited. They won't just come to us. Okay. Speaking of technology, don't blindly trust technology when it comes to the demos. Don't assume that things will work. Don't assume that when you go and show the feature that you're going to wow them with, that it's going to work and that you won't have bizarre issues you've never encountered. Okay, so have master or golden records and stick to them. I mentioned Annie Wallace earlier in the talk. Annie Wallace was our golden record and no one touched Annie Wallace. It was a record that was clean. It wasn't populated with 15 tests where someone's been working on the floor and you've got email test, Craig test 2, Craig test 4, Craig test 5. Why isn't this working? Craig test 6. We don't have them. You might have a record that is very deliberately for that, but you don't show a customer that. You'll need them. You don't need to show them. Make sure that if your demo features that they actually work. Don't assume that the report that you built 4 months ago is still working and the data's all right. Don't assume that the flow is turned on and that you still got it running properly, especially if you've been around any of the wave updates. Don't just assume that things are working. Okay, have things open. Don't be scared about having tabs open. I think one of the problems that we walk into in pre-sales is that because we often talk about things like, this is your user cockpit. You can get your people away from Outlook and Excel. You can get them into one system. It's one application. We get scared of having multiple tabs. Loading time is dead time when it comes to a demo. The fact that something might take 2 minutes to work across someone's 8-hour day is absolutely fine. In a pre-sales demo, that can seem like an eternity. Have things open, be willing to explain that you've got things open to move the process on, especially if you don't trust it. You know, we've got an accelerator that we use that is, how can I word it? It's a bit sensitive. So the best thing to do with that accelerator, it's an incredible bit of kit, but you never productionize it. You'd have to put a lot more guardrails around how stable it is. But the easiest thing to do in pre-sales is to have it open. Let it load first. The problem with it is it takes ages to load. Have it load. Then you're then ready to go. And have as few moving parts as possible. One of the big things that people who dive into pre-sales don't understand, and I think it's probably where pre-sales gets its dark arts reputation from, is that smoke and mirrors are your friend. In pre-sales, things don't have to work. They just have to look like they work. It doesn't have to be legit. Okay, as long as we aren't misleading a customer, and as long as any effort that we put at the end of it, assuming we sell it, is accurate and fair, it doesn't matter if the demo works or not. We just need to make sure that a customer can perceive the benefit it would have for their business. Okay, and so don't be scared of using smoke and mirrors. If you've got a hard code a record and then talk about how Power Automate can create that record, do it. As long as you're absolutely confident that Power Automate can actually do the thing that you're telling the customer it can do, why gamble? Why risk it? Why spend the time building it, the effort building it, the risk of it falling over if you can just get the customer to picture it? It's the trailer of a movie. I always talk about demos being the trailer of a movie. If you ever watch any of the Fast and the Furious trailers, okay, for 2.5 minutes, they look incredible. Then you go and sit through 2 hours of the movie and you think, that wasn't very good. Okay, so yes, we need to make sure that we're actually we're selling a product that is legit. We can't be going Fast and the Furious on it and we make something look great when it's terrible. But as long as we're confident that we're talking about things that can be achievable, just minimize your risk. And also have a plan B and probably a plan C. When you're doing your preparation, have your happy path. What are you going to do if it fails? What are you going to do if security rules have been changed, if someone's been working in the environment and the whole thing's falling over? So have a plan B and plan C, but also put some rules in place. Especially if you can work in environments that you can control well, have a rule that says 24 hours before a demo, we all agree that we won't touch it. If anything is that important that it has to be done, either move your demo, move the other thing, or spin up trial environments. Have rules in place to stop it happening. One of the biggest problems in pre-sales isn't dynamics falling over, it's people going and tripping over each other's feet, working in the same environments. So have your plans ready. Don't blindly trust the tech. Step 9, everything that we do must have a clear why, who, and how. And what I mean by this is, I think there's a very kind of cliche American phrase that says, if someone can say so what to your question, you shouldn't be asking it. It's something along those lines. The point's vaguely there. And we need to be of the same mindset, which is, if we can't answer why are we showing it, who in the room will care, and how does it help both us and them in terms of the sales process, we shouldn't be doing it. It kind of goes back to the what is the point, but it's at the other end of the scale. What is the point initially was about why are we even starting this demo? And again, what's really common is that the demo itself passes an orb. We agree that we should put some pre-sales time in. We can box off 5 days of someone's time to build and a day to deliver. And then we don't really do any more checks and balances until we get to the demo. You might do some kind of playbacks internally. You might not. But fundamentally, at some point before you show this to the customer, you need to sit down, look at your journey, look at your value blocks, look at the plan, and say, with each point that you're trying to cover, why am I showing this? And if it doesn't benefit the customer, don't show it. Who in the room will care? Because audience is important. Now, it might be the fundamental thing that you think that organization needs, but let's say it's about marketing and none of the marketing team are there. Then you either need to arrange a follow-up session or you need to not show it. And the final point is, does it help us and them? And it kind of goes back to just showing things for the sake of it. If right now we're showing AI to an organization that is still working off, local copies of Excel for their contact list, we might be getting ahead of ourselves slightly. We might not, I'm not sure. But ultimately, we need to answer those questions, which is, why are we showing it? Who's going to care? And does it help us both? If it doesn't, stop, go back. And this really is more about having that final checkpoint before you show it. Okay, make sure there's some level of playback. Get a peer's opinion. Get someone else in the team to have a look at it. One, it can help you perfect your script if you're using one, or your plan if you're not using a script, but you need some level of plan. And it could be a good opportunity for someone else in the team to say, I don't think that's necessary, or you're laboring that point. Ironically, with how long I spent on this slide, or it's just a chance of getting some level of sense check in there before you go and show it to the customer. And the final point is, just be yourself. nothing in pre-sales, in fact, nothing in the biz apps consultancy world is more powerful than authenticity. It's cliche, but it's true. People buy people. People work with people. Be yourself. I said when I was speaking at Scottish Summit, and I've mentioned this a lot, when I first got into the pre-sales world, so my background's actually in dynamics recruitment. And so I carried imposter syndrome with me for so long. And I tried to be work Craig. I tried to be professional Craig, and I was terrible at it because the mask would slip. I'd get excited and it would slip, or I'd get nervous and it would slip, or I'd try too hard and it would slip. And then what I realized is that the interactions that went best when it was just being myself. Now, some of that was when I lost a bit of imposter syndrome, and some of it was just when I realized that the people weren't bothered about the technology. They were bothered about how we could help their organization. And if I understood that, I was halfway there. So be yourself, be authentic. Don't try and be too technical if you're not, especially in pre-sales. Don't try and be too salesy if you're not. A salesperson will deal with that. Don't think that because you're in a demo, you've got to start banging questions in about budgets and timescales if that's not your bag, because you'll be asked a question and you'll fail. Be yourself, okay? And I guarantee that the best version of you is the authentic one, and that's the one that will get you closer to getting that deal for your company. And then my final point is just to basically don't take anything that I've said as being true, but read this book, okay? Because I'm just someone talking at you. The book's incredible for anyone that's genuinely interested in improving your demo skills, improving your sales skills. It doesn't matter if it's pre-sales. It could be, as I said before, it could be playbacks within sprints. It could be a whole host of different things. If you're just interested in how you can take people on that kind of journey of showing them something you want to sell them, I think this book's incredible. It took me so far in the early days of my pre-sales career, and I still refer back to it from time to time. It's quite dated in parts. So you probably don't need to read the chapter on where to place your overhead projector to get the best view for the room, but there's some absolute nuggets of gold in there. So I'd say don't take my word for it, just read it. It's an incredible book. You can get it on Amazon for a penny if your conscience allows you to, and you can read it in probably a day. No effort for anyone that wants to follow that career. So that being said, that was everything I was hoping to cover. It's just been me talking, which if we go back to slide 4, maybe I was hoping to avoid, but it is what it is. So I will take as many questions as people have. We've got time. And yeah, I hope that was useful in some description.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. We've got Michael's got his hand up there.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Yeah, really good session. Thank you. I had a question I'm a developer, so not quite in pre-sales. Do you typically see people go from developer to pre-sales as a career move?
No, but I don't know why, if I'm being honest. If you look at pre-sales on the whole, and for anyone that manages a pre-sales team, is responsible for recruiting pre-sales people, as I know Sarah is, pre-sales people are incredibly hard to find. And I think if someone shows an aptitude and a desire, that puts them 2/3 of the way there. Someone willing to do pre-sales is step 1 of the battle. So I think it shouldn't preclude people from doing it. We don't see it a lot. I think if you were playing tech cliche, right, forgive me, is that you would say developers don't particularly want to be in front of people if they can help it. The cliche is about being in dark rooms with headphones on and Metallica t-shirts, but I don't see why that's still the case. I think those days are kind of gone now. So I think if someone is from that development background, you would make yourself unique, because most people are like myself, more from that sales background and have found an aptitude to tech from a natural ability to sell. So I think if you're coming from that other side, you would make yourself very desirable, but it's not something I see a lot of, no.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm being rubbish. Charlie, you've got a question? Comment?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I personally learned a lot. Obviously, you covered some core fundamentals, but some of those fundamentals are crucial to sort of remind yourself. And I saw a few things that I could learn and pick up on. Just one comment when you said don't trust tech. A lot of the time what I do is pre-record as my plan B or C. So that was my only comment there. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and helping me learn, and probably other people on the call.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. And you're absolutely right. Ultimately, things will happen. Things will happen, especially, most of us are working from home now. So, especially school holidays or something like that, your kid comes in, wants to watch Paw Patrol, and all of a sudden your demo doesn't load. So having things out of your control will happen in this day and age. So having things ready to go is perfect. And, I think a customer would much rather it kind of alludes to something that I kind of wish I'd said at the time, which is I think a customer would much rather see a demo of a video of a demo done well than when people start diving into settings and trying to fix problems. If something goes wrong, please don't try and fix it on the fly. Don't do that. Don't start going, oh, this never happens. This never happens. Let me go into settings and let me just go and check I've got this. Just don't do that. Just acknowledge it and move on from it. So yeah, it's a great shout in terms of how to prepare yourself if that does go wrong. But yeah, don't try and fix technology on the fly in a demo. It looks horrendous.
Dave, I think you're next.
Hi, Craig. I just wanted to say thanks again. I mean, I saw this at Scottish
Pleasure.
Summit.
I hope it wasn't too repetitive for you.
No, I think it was just as good second time round. So I just wanted to say thanks. I think there's some real nuggets of gold in there, and also, yeah, Michael can be anything he wants to be as long as he finishes the project that we're working on first. All right, that was it for me. That was
Thanks,
great,
Dave. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Hi, yeah, thanks for taking my question. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So Craig, I delivered the demo to a school, and the kind of demo went really well, and they seemed really impressed in the demo, and kind of a week later I sent them the an RFI, well, they submit, and so I thought that covered all the bases, but they weren't very happy with it. Now my question is kind of, I wasn't completely sure, so I just wanted to know, like, you know, how is best to re-engage a customer that's kind of turned you down? Is it better to go directly to the person that you're demoing to, or perhaps go formally, leave a gap, perhaps to give them some time to think about things and then re-engage them? Just wanted to see how you deal with rejection first time round, and what's the best way to re-engage.
I think it's a great question, first of all. And it's a very multifaceted question. So this answer hopefully won't go too long, but I think there's a few things to cover there because I think it's an incredibly powerful question. The first one is in pre-sales, you're going to lose. Fundamentally, you're going to lose, okay? And especially for people who dip in and out of pre-sales, you can deliver the best demo and not win it for a whole host of reasons. You might be too expensive. Priorities might change. There could be 1,000,001 reasons why you don't win it beyond the demo itself. Okay, so that's the first thing, is you need to have some level of resilience and confidence, and be willing to take the bumps in the road. I had one where one of the first demos I delivered at Incremental, actually, I walked away thinking that was the best demo I'd ever done. And there was basically radio silence, and they came back eventually. But I spent months thinking, I don't know what I could have done better there. They eventually came back. We won the project. They just had commercial things they were dealing with internally. So yeah, that's step one. Losing will happen, and losing doesn't mean it was your fault. There could be a number of reasons why that happens, especially when it comes down to price. I always believe that pre-sales people should not be about pounds and pence. We should be days and minutes. We should be about how long things will take. We shouldn't be about the cost. Someone else should take care of that, because the minute we start looking at ways of doing it cheaper, we start sacrificing the integrity that pre-sales should have. We should be an advocate for the customer, make sure the right thing's done. When you start looking at pounds and pence, it makes it harder. So that's step one. The next thing I would say is it's important to understand why they didn't take it. So I delivered a demo not that long ago. I thought it went really well. We didn't win it. It was an RFI. The RFIs will be a theme in that. It's very hard within the RFI process to get proper feedback. So seek it where you can. But we arranged a feedback session. And so we spoke to the customer and said, you know, ultimately, we want a long-term relationship with you. We don't believe that this will be your only project that you have, but we believe that we can help you in multiple areas. So do you mind just telling us where we went wrong? Now, again, you need to prepare yourself for the fact that they may tell you were bad. Okay, so only walk into that room if you're prepared to hear the feedback that will be delivered to you. It probably won't be, especially in your scenario there. You said that the demo went well, but you know, you are opening yourself up to someone telling you that you weren't good enough. But if you can seek it, do it. And then in terms of re-engaging them, to me, that comes down to the salesperson, really. So it would depend on the structure of your organization. So I personally, I'm unlikely to go and speak to one of our customers that we may be lost to deal with and say, are you all right? Can I speak to you again? Blah, blah, blah. But what I would expect is if we've got to the point where a customer trusts us enough to do a demo for them, that our salespeople have built up a relationship with them, that they can have that level of conversation. So in the businesses I've worked at, that would be a salesperson's responsibility. And my task would be simply to support them in the way that I would, irrespective. But yeah, losing one thing shouldn't mean your relationship with the customer's died. So I said a few things there. I hope that answers the question, Lucy, which is if you can engage them, absolutely, as long as you're the right person. If it's through your sales team, respect that boundary and let them take care of that. But seek feedback, learn from it, and the big thing is just accepting the fact that you will lose in pre-sales. Sadly, you will lose a lot more than you'll win.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I relate to so much of that, by the way, Craig.
It's a numbers game, right? It's a numbers game, and you know, for most pre-sales people, you're doing multiple demos a month. I think, you know, certainly from your perspective, Sarah, if Incremental started winning every demo we went for, then you would make a fortune off us on recruitment fees. It doesn't work like that. You know, there's lots of reasons why you might not be chosen. It might be culture fit. It might be geographic. It might be price. There's all sorts of reasons why it might not happen. And it's, yeah, in my opinion, the actual demo itself, it's rarely the reason. It's rarely the reason. Good or bad, why things are won or lost.
Feedback's so important, isn't it? Because you get, even if it's negative, and often even more so if it's negative, you get bigger and better with every bit of feedback that you get. So I always seek negative feedback or constructive feedback, but I think it's
so important, and especially when it's something that you want to do regular. So one of my harshest lessons was learning, especially as someone from the Northeast, is that I just speak too fast. I speak too quickly. I see it now. Again, I'm working in the Spanish market. Is that, you know, you jump on with people from Andalusia and it's like speaking a different language. And so I had to accept that what came naturally to me, which is the speed at which I speak, it was just counterproductive. And so I didn't particularly want to hear that, but I had to learn from it, or else I would have been far less successful for my organization than I was able to be. So you're right. It has to be constructive. Now, if someone just said, yeah, you're crap, I would just dismiss that in a heartbeat because it's objectively untrue. But when someone says something that I can pin down, and when you hear it time and time again, at some point you've got to listen to it and say, you know, that's where we are. You know, if it was organization wide and it said your offering is just not compelling, we would expect marketing or someone to take that on board and do something about it. Your rates are too high. I'd expect someone to look at that. I can't expect people to look at it at that level and not take it on board when it's about myself. So yeah, you're so right. And especially when you are, for all intents and purposes, the face of the organization for that hour, you've got to be willing to be, you know, the person that you're needed to be whilst retaining that level of authenticity that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, 100%, totally agree. There's a couple more questions. James has written one in the Q&A. Can you see that, Craig? Would you need to?
Bear with me. What's your go-to way to bring up the level of enthusiasm and interaction of a call that's feeling disinterested? To be brutally honest with you, James, I just pick people and I speak to them directly. In the same way that I would if my kid is ignoring me because he's on his iPad. So if Jacob's ignoring me, I just say Jacob until he listens to me. And it's a bit weird doing that in a room of adults, granted, but I pick people. So if I realise that, I don't know, Sally's never come off mute, I'll just ask her a question that seems relevant to her. I think if you can get a list of the people that you're expecting in the room in advance, it helps. So let's take Sally. If Sally is the FD and she's not responding, then we've got a problem because at some point Sally's going to have to sign a check. So I would just ask people. I would be interactive. If questions aren't coming my way, generally, I'll go and plant them. I'll go and ask people. I'll reconfirm things are working. And instead of saying, you know, it's a terrible thing really, but instead of saying, does that make sense? Which is one of the worst questions in the English language, I will say, Sally, can you see that working for your part of the business, or you know, would we look at something else? And so I would just not target people, but I can't pinpoint them, and I would just be proactive, and I would go and ask that person, and then they've got a choice, right? If they don't want to come off mute, they've either got a reason, and we have to respect it, or they're just being a bit of an arse. And in which case, if you aren't going to win that person over, move on to people that you can influence. There's no easy way of doing it, though. Not really.
Yeah, totally agree. We all know those people are probably hanging the washing out or something, aren't they?
Yeah. If someone said they were making a cup of tea, I'd respect it. I'd pause the demo for them because tea is life. But yeah.
Yeah, Charlie's popped some comments in there as well.
Do not solutionize on a pre-sales. Oh, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. And I think some of that falls into that. Sorry, to anyone who hasn't seen it, it's about don't solutionize and don't overpromise. 100%. And the solutionizing part's really, really, really tricky. Really tricky because a customer asks you a question and you feel compelled to give them an answer, right? My advice would be on that, irrespective, even if it is the most obvious solution in the world. Even, for example, someone says, I'm just really, I'm really intrigued as to whether you can surface emails in Dynamics. Even if it's something as simple as that, start every single one of those points with, that's interesting, tell me more about why that's important. Just give yourself the why, okay? Even if you know the why, even if the why is obvious, no one will ever be upset with you for asking for more information to make sure you give them the right answer. But it gives you that little bit of time where you can take a step back and say, right, I was about to go and tell them the solution there. It's an amazing point, 100%. Ask why for everything, even if you know the answer. And then the overpromise thing is fundamental. And it's hard to explain ways to not do that other than saying, put yourself in the shoes of the delivery team. And if that gets thrown over the fence, what are you going to say? Now, the challenge that we find in pre-sales, in my opinion, isn't so much about overpromising things that can be done. I don't think you see that too many times because that should be stopped before a proposal goes out. Someone somewhere should have to review that from an architectural perspective. The big thing that pre-sales has that delivery teams don't have is the ability to engage with a customer before the deal is signed. Okay, very hard to walk away from a customer once they've agreed to pay you for a project. However, we need to acknowledge the fact that not all partners are right for all customers and not all customers are right for all partners. And so what pre-sales has is an incredibly powerful view into the relationship of the future. And we need to be prepared to advise the business that they walk away because the fit isn't right. So it's not just about over-promising on technology, it's about over-promising on ways of working. If you've got a customer that is absolutely hell-bent on having every single person that delivers for them on site, which still happens, and as a partner, you've never promised that to your people. You've told them that they can work remotely and they don't have to travel to sites. That's the job of the poor salespeople. They've got to go out and about and meet people. You've got a fundamental problem. So even if that solution can be delivered, it can be delivered on time, it can be delivered on budget, but it can't be delivered in the way that both parties want to work. Pre-sales have got a window to that and need to walk away from it. So don't just overpromise. It's not just about avoiding overpromising on tech. It's also about ways of working, and pre-sales are the people that can acknowledge that more than salespeople can. Salespeople have a vested interest in getting things over the line. Pre-sales people should have a vested interest in getting things done properly, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank
you. Not to say, sorry, that's not to say pre-sales people don't do that, by the way. It's just that, there's often a bit of a financial ramification to them saying yes and no. We often don't have that.
Anna's got her hand up there. Anna, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, hello. First of all, thanks for the session. I bought the book already. It was more than a penny from Amazon. So anyone
was it?
Yes.
Sell it on and make your money back. You'll be fine.
Well, I will do. So yes, my question is, so I delivered like few pre-sales demo before, and I always by default started with few slides and then actual demo. Is that a good thing to do, or is it better just to kind of focus on showing things around and focusing on scenario, or is it good to have like a bit of an intro and a few flashy slides as well? What is your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it depends on what the slides are showing. And your audience. If you're speaking to a customer that knows you, obviously you'd like to think that you wouldn't have to. I think a bit of scene set's important. My advice would be only show slides that you'd be happy to send after the event. I think that's really important. What you don't want to do is someone says, can I have a copy? And you have to say, oh, I'm sorry, no. So everything that you commit to that slide has to be shareable. And I think it depends on the message you're trying to land. So often in the pre-sales world, you're going to be thrown into engagement number 2. Basically, the salesperson's met with the organization. They've understood some level of detail to varying degrees of success. And then you're asked if you can do it. And as long as it passes that what's the point test, you might be the second time you've spoken to them. So having that scene set of who you are as a partner, I think could be really powerful. One of the things that we do a lot is that we have a slide that is around why you should choose a partner. And in a pre-sales capacity, it's a really good opportunity for me, going back to the point I just made about we should be responsible for things being done properly, to explain the way that we work. And there's something really powerful about someone who isn't a salesperson giving that message, because what you do as a techie, quote unquote, is you give that customer the ability to judge you as a partner quite neutrally. Not every opportunity is something that you want to win. There is opportunities out there that you don't want to win. Not every partner is right for every customer. Not every customer is right for every partner, like I said before. So by presenting that slide that we have around how we work, how we like to work, our values, it allows the organization that we're speaking to assess whether we're right before we even got into how we can solve their problems. We might just not be right. Okay, there's a million different flavors of Microsoft Partner out there. They'll find one that's right for them. So I think if you're willing to send the slides, if you think they add value, and if you can answer the question around what's the point, do it. If it's just generic stuff that everyone's seen, I probably wouldn't bother. But what you might find is that the salesperson wants to start with it because they want to feel like they're giving something back. So I'd be less bothered about the salesperson showing slides. Even if I thought they were a bit rubbish, I'd probably let them crack on. But yeah, they have a time and a place, definitely. But I think you need to tread with caution about going too heavy on slides. I wouldn't have, for example, I would never have slides. I would never have slides about technology beyond just the regular Microsoft ecosystem, just to give people an idea of what we're playing with. You know, I'd happily show them a slide of the ecosystem and explain that, you know, it's Lego bricks and we put them all together and blah, blah, blah. Look at the scale of it. Isn't it amazing? But I would never have slides about the solution that I'd be presenting, for example.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
That's awesome. Unless there's any last minute questions, about an hour. Yeah, that was really good. From a personal point of view, you know, from a salesperson point of view, I've taken quite a lot away from that. And nice. I'll be sharing the recording with the team here as well, I think, because I think there's some transferable things that you've mentioned. So yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone for getting involved as well. A little bit of interaction there at the end.
Perfect. Thanks so much. If anyone, again, I may as well plug it, even though the upload cadence is terrible. If you do want to find out a bit more, practicalpresales.com. It's got some stuff on there, and I keep saying I'll do more, and I will eventually, I promise. But yeah, there's some stuff on there if you want to check it out.
Thank you, Craig. That was brilliant.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Have a great evening. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Craig. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.